Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Family Reflections. I'm in here today with Krishma Qualis. She is a St. Lucian social worker currently based in the uh, island of Barbados. So, Krishma, tell the people hello.
Hi everybody. Hi Kitty. Thanks for having me on today.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining us. Folks, today Kina couldn't join us. I know y'all like her more than me. So uh, I hope that you can still follow the conversation with my rambling as best as you can. Krishma is way more versed in this discussion than I am, but I'll be trying to follow along. Uh, I hope you
I
guys.
I wouldn't I wouldn't say that I am, honestly. I wouldn't say that I am, but yes, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, either way, it's a good opportunity to touch on something that
I
I
agree.
think
Yeah.
is a way overdue. And we really need to call awareness to in order for us to approach a working solution on this. All right.
No problem.
Folks, you might be wondering what I'm talking about. Today, we're talking about colorism in the Caribbean, really around the world as well, but more specifically in the Caribbean region. Uh, as relates to people preferring people with lighter skin. So,
I would my turn to speak.
okay, I think it's something that we really need to knock out as a people and a culture. Um, so, one of the first things that I think we're going to touch on is the fact that very often, even as a little boy, if I walked into a bank, if I walked into a place of business, the lady across the counter was always a lighter skinned lady, maybe an Indian lady, or um, and I've heard that that was not an accident, that in St. Lucia and very well many other Caribbean islands, there has been this preference for people with lighter skin. Would you agree with that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I had a similar experience as well growing up. In particular the banks. For
Right.
some reason I do agree. And you find that when you enter the banks, those employees that you would interact with, the tellers more likely than not, they had to have a specific look,
Right.
and they had to be all put together. Um, at that time, did I give it any thought that that was not perchance? I cannot say that I did. It was something that was the norm, and I accepted it as that. Of course, now when you become an adult, you question those things that we consider a norm in our upbringing. At this point, we have a greater understanding, a greater knowledge of these issues like colorism and all of the other issues that are existing in our world. Then we begin to question and to challenge those things that are all too familiar to our upbringing. And I'm certain that we're not the only ones who can say, well, yes, that was part of my upbringing as a child, going into certain establishments and seeing lighter skinned women or women with long flowing hair, and probably those who didn't have long flowing hair probably had the long straightened hair and the
Right.
like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you on that. It is definitely something that is what's the word? Uh, Help me. What's the word?
It's a really common occurrence.
Dominant. Yeah, yeah,
Dominant. Yeah.
yeah. In
Yeah.
our society, that's the word. Prevalent, perhaps. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In our society. So I'm with you on that.
And I think it's so prevalent that I was going to wait till later on to discuss this, but I think it's so prevalent that people have decided to start bleaching to increase their chances
Well,
of.
people haven't only now decided to start bleaching.
Okay,
I think.
what do you
Well,
know about
I'm
bleaching
not
that I don't?
I'm not a historian, but I think I'm not. But I think that people have been bleaching for a long time. I think it's funny, right? Because when I think of bleaching, and I hope this doesn't sound or come out bad, I always think of Jamaican women. because
Okay.
you know bleaching is a big thing in Jamaica. And I remember
Right.
a couple
Vibes
years back.
cartel, bleaching. This cake soup. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. A lot of those persons of influence who are out there in the public sphere, which is for another aspect of this discussion when we get down to perhaps social media and the influence of media on the whole
Yeah.
on its influence on colorism. But anyways, before I lose my train of thought, right, I always think rather of Jamaicans when I think of bleaching. And I don't know what caused me to go searching for this documentary a couple years back. I remember we were watching this video, and the women were telling you about their bleaching routines, and I was so shocked because growing up growing up at home, it's like you have, I don't know if you know, but women who have acne, some of the creams that they use are actually like skin lightening creams.
Really?
So this is as much of the bleaching experience that I've had, not personally, but witnessing like my friends who've had issues with acne, and then you have the lightening cream, and when you think, then you
But
probably see hair a little lighter than
hold
the
on.
rest, and hair a little lighter.
Yeah, hold on. Why does the acne cream have to lighten? What's
I
the
don't know because, well, honestly, I never had an issue with acne, so I cannot speak firsthand. But sometimes, like some women, I guess men too, the acne problem is so bad that it leaves black
okay,
spots.
scarring, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
That so I guess the cream would help to reduce the visibility of the thing
Okay.
of
So it
the
kind of
scars
erases those
from the
scars.
right. So I
Okay.
guess in treating it, you probably use like a skin lightening cream so that the black spots there from the acne would kind of fade away.
Okay. All right.
So, but listen to what I'm saying. Like I never thought of that as bleaching, but it is because it is a skin lightening cream. It does that. It would bleach your skin. So you may realize that persons who are trying to get rid of those black spots actually have like areas in their skin, especially on the face, where it may be lighter than other areas. I think some people use it for other parts of their bodies, like their legs. You know, like you could have, because we have people
Why are
have
you
this.
trying to bleach your legs?
No, it's not like you're trying to bleach your legs, but I guess like if you have marks on your skin, you might use this skin lightening cream for the marks.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Again, like
So
I say, I'm not speaking first-hand experience, so I stand to be corrected. But again, I never thought of that as bleaching.
okay. Yeah, I'm following you.
I mean, in time you understand that, hey, this is exactly what it is. But going back to my story about the video I was watching.
Yeah.
So yes, these women were talking about their daily routine, like what they would do on a night before they go to bed. Um, put on the I guess it's probably a skin lightening cream and wrap themselves. I don't know why they would wrap it. I guess the heat would probably help the process. And this particular lady who was being interviewed, she said she does it because the Jamaican men do not look at them. They do not consider them as beautiful if they are very dark in complexion. So the lighter your skin tone,
The better
the
your
more
chances.
beautiful you would be considered, the more attractive you would be to these men. So it's interesting. But anyways, so they felt as women, for us to be seen as a good catch to those guys,
All right.
we have to do that. We have to kind of take down this complexion because it's probably too dark.
All right.
So yes, when I think of bleaching, I think of that particular video that I saw and the women talking about their experience not being wanted by a man. Let me not say not being wanted,
But being
not being the
overlooked.
first pick, being overlooked, right? Not
Right.
being
Right.
the first pick because you probably fall way down on his list.
Yeah, and
So
that's ridiculous, right?
is
But
it really ridiculous?
no,
Because I gave this example about Jamaica, but it happens in St. Lucia, and I'm certain it happens across the region.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it's ridiculous in that it's unique to Jamaica. I'm saying that it's
Okay,
ridiculous in that it
okay,
happens, period.
okay.
And before we continue, I want to just talk a little bit about the side effects of bleaching. Let me just list this out to you guys, right? We have
Yes,
skin
please.
redness,
Uh-huh.
blisters, skin ulcers, hives. I don't even know what hives is, but it sounds terrible, right?
I know
Dry,
something like
scaly
a
skin,
rash.
right? Swelling, itching, burning, and tenderness. So this is not a comfortable process.
No,
It doesn't sound like something
no,
that is stress-free. It sounds like something that
no.
you're actually subjecting your body to for
So why would you put yourself through that? Is the
exactly.
question.
Uh, how important is it to
I guess
not?
the
I don't
gains,
know.
the
Yeah.
gains, like, I don't know. I think that I don't know because I do not know the personal experiences of these women. So for me to say that it's not worth it for them to put themselves through that, of course it is concerning. That's not what I'm saying. But I think I would be out of place to say that it's not worth it for them to go through all of this. I mean the side effects, and you could see too, because I don't think that they can go directly into the sunlight because the
Really,
skin
because
is
they've lost their melanin,
it's so
basically.
sensitive. Yeah, the skin is so sensitive. So you may see that women who are bleaching may use umbrellas a lot or that kind of thing, or may have clothing that would cover their skin. I guess maybe for a certain period of time. Again, I don't know. I don't know. Personally, I don't know all the details, but
So this phrase just came to my mind, and it's funny because it's the direct opposite. You've heard of tall, dark, and handsome, right?
mhm.
That is what has historically been used to
For
describe
men, for
for men.
men,
Yes, for
yes,
men, and I'm clear
yes,
about that. For men,
uh-huh.
the phrase is tall, dark, and handsome. And
Mhm.
so, is it not fair to say to some degree, and I'm saying this as much as I'm asking it because I've experienced it to some
Mhm.
extent, even though I'm not extremely light. Um, I
But
think,
you are light.
yeah, I am on the
Yeah,
lighter spectrum,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I feel that um, I have been there's some sort of reverse discrimination where some women will say you're too light, you're not dark enough, right? And that leads me to the question: is it bad to have a preference based on complexion? Is that in and of itself being coloristic? In and of itself, is that a bad thing? Where's the line there? Is there a line there?
I don't think it's wrong to have a preference. I mean, we have a preference with almost everything else. So certain men may prefer women who are athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Certain men may prefer women who have a skill like they probably could play an instrument or something like that. Um, so is having a preference bad? No, it is not.
So if it's
Can
not
having
bad,
a
then
preference lead to complexion discrimination? That's what you call it?
that's
Or
what I'm
skin tone
asking.
bias
Yeah,
or
colorism
colorism,
basically. Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. Can it lead to that? Of course it can. But
Okay.
in and of itself, having a preference is not bad. So should you bash a man because he likes a woman who is thick? No.
No.
So should
Okay.
you bash a man because he likes light-skinned women? No. But
But then we're
there is
clearly
a thin line.
we're clearly saying,
There is a thin line.
all right.
There is a thin line between that being a preference and it's becoming something that is a bias based on the person's
Discriminatory.
skin tone. Now, how do you explain this? For it to be discriminatory, it has to be um,
It's kind of tricky, right?
it's kind of tricky, but it isn't. It's kind of tricky, but anyways,
Okay, so
I
going
want
back, let's go back to the scenario in Jamaica, right, where these women
Uh-huh.
are bleaching. Is it not then fair to say that these guys just have a preference for light-skinned women?
It could be a preference, but it could be a preference, and I'm not saying it isn't. But don't forget, when we begin to go along the lines of discrimination, we're talking about unjust treatment of people based on whatever, whether it be race or their age or their sex or their religious affiliation, ethnicity. So I think what differentiates it is the unjust treatment. So if somebody is being treated unjustly, unfairly because of his or her skin tone, then we could say it is discrimination.
So can we
So
apply?
this is why I say it's ticklish in that instance, because can you say a man liking a woman who is light skinned, him treating a
Is
woman like me who is dark skinned unfairly? Is it?
is it? To be honest, there's a lot of question marks there.
Is it because it cannot really be proven per se in that instance when we classify it as a preference? Because if it's a preference, can you really classify it and say, well, he's treating somebody of a darker skin tone unfairly, unjustly? I
Right.
think that's quite a stretch.
It is a bit of
However,
a stretch, yeah.
however, if you were to go into other issues like denying me a job at a bank, for example,
Right.
because I am so dark,
Which is
well, somebody might look and argue and say, oh, well, you have long flowing hair, so you might get the job. But, and that's another part of colorism, huh? Not just our skin tone, but you see this
the texture of your hair, right?
texture of your hair.
Yeah.
Anyways, so if we begin to talk about me not getting that job as a bank teller or front office clerk because I am dark, then yes, I would consider that discrimination.
Yeah.
I well, yeah, that would be discrimination.
No,
Can I
I
say
agree.
that a guy having a preference is discrimination? I don't know that I can.
Okay, but
I'm not saying it's not possible, but I cannot say that I can use that example as an example of discrimination against women who are darker in skin tone.
I agree. And I think there's so many instances where, well, this is what I want to point out. I think there are so many instances where the preference seems to be towards the lighter shade that it's suspicious, right? And we need to talk about it. In
Okay, okay, so I get you there, and you do have a valid point, because when we begin to look at it in a wider and a broader context, then we begin to understand that hey, there is something here that is worth investigating.
right,
So it's not just you as a guy, Keddy, having a preference for women who are lighter in complexion. And I'm not saying that Keddy has any preference for
I
women in
don't.
lighter complexion. This is
I
just
don't.
me
Yeah,
using that as an example. Um, Individually, it is difficult to say, well, yes, it's discrimination, or yes, he is one who has skin tone bias. But when we begin to look at it on a broader scale, as a society,
mhm,
as Black men, um, oftentimes you hear Black men choosing um, white women as partners,
right.
and people scoff at that. But we are talking about that. uh, we're staying within our race. So when you have our men, our young men choosing women who are lighter in complexion because she's more beautiful, we hear words or phrases like belty shabin.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm certain you've heard that, right?
I've heard
So once she has a very high complexion, may say belty shabini,
that. Right.
you know,
No, that's
I don't
real.
know what, yeah, you've I've heard it. So you find that we are classified now as women in our society. What determines our belty, and what
Right.
determines that we make the cut?
Right.
So
And
of course, women who have a lighter skin tone, they tend to be considered more beautiful than women who are dark.
right. And
Why is that the case?
I think
Socialization.
right. because I was just about to point out that our preferences don't come from a vacuum.
Nope.
Uh, I think
Nope.
every single one of us has preferences that come
Yep.
from your experiences, from the people around
Mm-hmm.
you, from the books you read, from the movies you watched growing up, to the point where you begin to form this personality
Mm-hmm.
of this individual who has all these preferences. And so I think it's important for us as a society to ensure that we're not favoring a preference in certain directions that may cause discriminatory behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If I said that correctly. All right. Um, there's something else as well. In St. Lucia, we've had a number of different prime
Mm-hmm.
ministers since we were independent. Ever since we gained independence, and a lot of islands throughout the region also, uh, they also have a similar story. Uh, our prime ministers throughout my life have generally been mulatto men. And I say mulatto
Yeah, because
referring to
we've had three, right? John Compton, Kenny
right,
Anthony, and Alan Chastney
right.
in
And
our life.
ex-
Well, throughout St. Lucia's history, right?
yeah,
Am I
so
correct?
yeah, for
And
most
then
of our,
there was somebody else though. I think that person serves under the Labour Party.
I
There
don't
was
think I know
somebody,
who
I
that
can't
person
remember
is.
the name right now, but there was somebody else, probably between somewhere around yeah, there was somebody else. I'll have to go and
Go
Google.
look it up.
I,
But it just leaves me with the question: why does it seem like a majority African-based population, a population whose ancestry is primarily African, with dark skin, seems to be pushed in the direction of showing political favor to leaders of the uh, lighter persuasion? Like, why is that? And
before I answer that question, Katie, I have to go and do my homework quick. Um, Alan Louise is the person I was referring to, but we did omit Stevenson King. I just wanted to
uh,
put that out there.
yeah, but I omitted Stevenson
So,
King intentionally, right?
so
Because
the
he's a
the
darker
three
guy.
the three in particular is we're talking about lighter skin prime ministers would be
Yes.
Compton and Kenny and Chastney.
Right.
Um, have we voted in have we voted in lighter skin leaders because of skin tone bias? I don't know. Perhaps not. But
I think there's a high probability, just given the length of time that these people have been in power
mhm,
and how the statistics show that people running for office in St. Lucia that have lighter skin tend to get in more often than their
their
counterparts.
counterparts. What?
Yeah.
Okay, I will say two things. Right. On the one hand, um, can I really say that yes, persons have voted these leaders because of their skin tone? I can't really say that. I mean, I haven't sat with the St. Lucian population, or at least part thereof, and question, well, ma'am, who did you vote for prime minister? So who did you vote for prime minister, and what influenced that decision? I haven't done that.
Right.
So I cannot come and say, okay, based on my survey or based on research that I've conducted, that yes, St. Lucians or this percentage of St. Lucians voted based on color bias. So I cannot do that with
Well, would they even
information that I do
really?
not have.
Would
That's
ever?
on one hand.
Okay, go ahead.
On the other hand, on the other hand, what I will say, I mean, from my background and my own upbringing, is there a possibility? Of course there is, because as a like growing up, when we heard of white, and I say white, even though these persons we are speaking of are not white, they may be mixed
Yeah,
to
yeah.
a certain
They're
extent,
they're they're all pretty much mixed. Yeah.
Right. So even though I say white, but anyways, white light. That's what I'll say. White slash light.
Mm-hmm.
When we think of that term in itself, it has always been associated. And I mean, you could ask many other people, and I'm certain that this might be their same response. that has always been associated with beauty. It's better, it's superior,
Yeah.
um, it's the top of the list.
Right.
And so if something is being portrayed or it is believed to be superior, wouldn't that be your choice? Wouldn't that be your preference?
Right. It's
So
true.
no, I haven't sat with them and questioned the voters. But when we begin to look at our background and our history, um, and we begin to understand how these values and these beliefs have really been indoctrinated in us, even from children being raised up in that society, then we begin to understand subconsciously that we make such decisions. I mean, it may not be leaders. It may be that first example we had, life partners.
Right. Right.
It may be employees if we are in a position where we're the one hiring employees in our organization. We may decide, well, and I think it is really sad when we are not aware of those biases.
Right.
Because when you're aware of it, Kelly, then you could fix it. You could change it. You could change that mindset, or at least begin to make attempts to change it.
Yeah.
When you are not aware that it even exists, then I think it's an even greater problem.
Yeah. Absolutely. Slavery uh, was used to really separate people based on their shade, based on their complexion.
Mhm.
So, and this happened in different ways throughout the region. In Haiti, there's a particularly interesting story there. So, listeners and viewers, if you want to check that out, make sure to go check out the history of colorism in Haiti as well. But the running theme seems to be that uh, the darker you were, of course,
Mhm.
you were treated the worst. And as the shade lightened up the spectrum, you got to be you either got preferential treatment or better conditions, or you were a free person and you were allowed to live free. And depending on the concentration of white blood in your veins, you could actually.
I was about to say that because as slaves, um, the 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 complexion would change based on whether they are purely of African descent, or
Right,
whether they had some white blood in there.
right,
And we know those stories in terms of the slave owners having children with the women, um, the women who were slaves. Um, I think, I mean, I wasn't there during slavery, but based on what I've read through the years, um, I'm thinking, right? I don't know whether we could blame our ancestors. That's the truth. Because
okay.
like, imagine you're in the field, right?
Right,
It is believed that the house slaves were treated a bit better. They were not
right.
they were not treated royally, but they were treated a bit better than the field slaves.
Well,
So
remember, I
imagine.
just want to paint the context for you.
Uh-huh.
I'm not thinking of someone who was introduced to the Caribbean, someone who was taken from Africa, brought to the Caribbean. I'm talking about somebody who literally grew up in this environment where people with lighter skin were just treated better, where there was a white
but
Jesus
but this is what
in a
I'm saying.
painting,
Why
right?
were they treated better? Again, it goes back to the perception that white is superior. um, and that was what the slave owners brought to our ancestors. The white race is superior. So of course, even though they were not purely white, the very fact that some parts of them resembled this,
Right,
it means that they automatically were on the superior, or they automatically belong to the superior race, although we know that the whites would not consider them white.
right. They still weren't good enough to
They
be
weren't good
considered.
enough
Yeah,
because, of course, the black blood is flowing through them, in as much as they don't look as dark as the others, but they're still not going to be good enough. But for the blacks now, the black slaves, it's like it still resembles what is superior to us.
so what I'm not clear on is why you're saying that we can't use this origin story for colorism.
Oh no, I didn't say that. I said I'm wondering whether we could blame them,
Oh,
whether
I'm
we
not
could
saying that they
blame.
can be blamed. I
Yeah,
was
that's what
never
I'm saying.
casting
I'm not
blame. No.
saying. I'm not, of course we should. I mean, we have to, because this is where all of this is derived from, especially for us now. When we begin to have conversations about how do we address this issue of colorism, we have to go back from where it started. This is
Yeah.
where it all started.
But
So it's inculcated in our very upbringing. So when we have to begin to break those mindsets, we have to understand, well, this is where it all started. So
right.
we can't break it. I mean, we can um make the effort now, but what I'm saying is that it didn't start now.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Can we agree that in defining where it started, we don't need to cast blame, right? That can we agree on that?
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Which was
uh,
why I was like, can we really blame our ancestors who were in that position, who were in that situation? And this is why I was trying to bring the scenario of the house slave and the field slave. So imagine the field slave is out there working hard and toiling. Not saying the house slave wasn't, but you out there in the sun all day long. The house slave is in the house,
yeah.
probably getting better food than the scraps you're getting, even though they're not getting a whole full meal. And then now they're producing children for the master.
Right.
I can understand, in a sense, well, I can understand why that would stimulate even feelings of hatred towards children of mixed children, the master
Absolutely.
and the, yeah, I can understand why that would create hatred amongst the slaves themselves. So then you begin to wonder, why is it that as Black people that we are thinking the way that we do, that we are behaving the way that we do towards fellow Black people?
Well, I just want to point something out, right? I think stratifying the society at the time in the way that it
Mm-hmm.
was done was intentionally weakening any opposition to the institution of slavery. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, what I mean there is that by dividing the population, because you have to understand the position of the white guys who own slaves.
Mm-hmm.
You're surrounded by people who are stronger than you.
Yep.
And could beat you up and decide they're not doing what you're telling them to do at any point of the day. So
Mm-hmm.
historically, it's been shown that slave owners were terrified constantly that the slaves would rise up, which they did
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes successfully. And they were afraid that these slaves would rise up and kill them, basically. And so if you want to control a population, it tends to be in your interest to divide that population as much as possible, to
Yes.
cause as
Yes.
much division
Yes.
and
So they are not
internal
as
conflict.
unified.
Right.
Yep.
And so in doing so, we look at the side effects where hundreds of years later, we're
Yep.
still internally divided
Yep.
and we still have internal conflict. And that's what I think, if anything, viewer or listener, you take away from this conversation, I think you should take away that we need to roll back the damage that has been done, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that, Krishna?
How do we go about doing that?
I was just, I was
How
just
do
about
we
to ask that.
how do we go about addressing this issue when Keddy constantly, the media
Yeah.
is portraying that beauty is the lighter tone woman? And another thing I've realized, I don't know, like, whether it's just my perspective, I find that if they are going to use Black people, they either use like really, really, really Black people or really light people. That makes sense. Is
Uh,
that true? I don't know. Is
I
that
think
just
I'm
a part of it?
following, but
It's
I want some clarification though.
okay. Like I'm thinking. Okay, movies, for example. I find that I don't. Oh, let me not use movies. Let me say probably the fashion industry.
Yeah.
If you look at models, I think in the past it was like models, you would probably get the lighter tone ones chosen, but now we're trying to break down all of these historical barriers. So perhaps in an attempt to undo all of those injustices which have been done towards the Black community, um, I find that it's either you find models who are extremely light skinned or models who are extremely dark skinned. It's like from one end of the spectrum to another. I
Right.
don't know.
For
That's
me,
as an aside though. Like
I,
anyway,
I, I know it's
that's
an
just
aside,
an
but
observation.
I think
I could be wrong, but
yeah, in that case, I think it's almost like as a model, you having a very exotic um, complexion makes you more attractive to the
so what is an what
fashionistas.
is exactly? So what is an exotic complexion?
Very pale or very, very dark, or yeah, I think that's what you're seeing there.
So going back to your question now, I think a point you raised earlier talking about women who now feel that they are not dark enough, they're too light to be considered dark. And if we were to put ourselves in the shoes of those people, you're not white, because then they're not considered
Right,
white, they're not accepted as white because they're not, but
right,
yet still they're not considered as Black. So what are
right,
they, and how do we cause those individuals to feel in terms of not belonging? Where do they belong?
right, and
Where do
that
they belong?
yeah, that is
So
the
we
exactly
understand that they're not purely white, because we do understand, yes, there is Black blood running through their veins, so of course you know they ain't pure. I mean, that sounded bad.
no, we get exactly what you mean.
Anyways,
Uh,
so it's I feel that we ourselves now are being unfair and we are being unjust.
it's true.
You cannot you cannot tell somebody that they are not dark enough or they're not Black enough. Like what is that? What is Black enough? What is dark enough?
Yeah, because oftentimes, and we do this innocently, and almost as a joke, but a lot of jokes are based on truth. Oftentimes, if we have a friend of
It's true.
ours, yeah, if
It's
we have
true.
a friend of ours who's very very light, we tend to tell that person, "You're not Black," right? And in doing so, we kind of jokingly exclude that person
Yeah, yeah.
from the struggle. Um,
Mhm.
but I don't think that should necessarily be
It
that.
shouldn't be at all. And I think so. We're talking about, so how do we begin to address these issues? I think there has to be a consciousness in our actions, in our words, excuse me, even in our thoughts,
Right,
and to realize, even like you said, things that we do and we say jokingly, these things are not jokes.
right. It's
You
true.
know, when we begin to define beauty based on one's complexion. And Kerry, I had my personal experience with this when a couple years ago, when what? That's like probably 8 years or so ago, when I started to experience hair loss. Personally, I went on a journey where my whole, and I shared that when on Chadell's channel as well, where
Mhm.
my whole definition of beauty was redefined, because I didn't even realize that what's the saying? Chivose belteo. Yes, like
For our listeners who don't
we
understand Creole, she just
oh
meant that's Creole for your hair is your beauty, right? And
yes,
yeah, that's
thanks.
solution Creole for that.
Thanks
Yeah,
for that, Kenny. But we don't realize that you say these things to children growing up, and I never realized, not until I had that experience, that I owned that. And that is an untruth. That is an untruth. How many untruths are we teaching to our children? How many untruths are we teaching to our young men?
it's true.
Why is it that our young men are preferential? But
I noted the pause there. I saw the pause.
why is it that our young men are preferential when it comes to lighter skinned women? What are we as parents teaching to them?
Right. You know what's interesting though? This whole conversation is also true in Japan. While I was doing my research on bleaching,
Hmm.
I came across the fact that bleaching is also very common in Japan as well, and actually goes as far back as the 1800s.
It's not
Um,
only amongst Us in the Caribbean, but anyways, yes.
Yeah. So in that case, then is I know Europeans
So what was
colonized
the
the
reason
entire.
there? What was the reason for them bleaching? Because you think of Japanese women as okay. Before I say anything, I think I've said women a lot, right? Men
Mhm.
also bleach. So let me just put that out there.
Right.
Like, yeah, I think I've said women throughout this discussion, but
Well,
men also.
with
So what
men,
cause to me, Japanese tend to be lighter in complexion, aren't they?
well, they are
Well, most of them at least. Lighter
lighter,
than us.
yeah, but
Yeah, they are
very,
by
very
far.
much like Caribbean society. Um, they put their lighter folks at the forefront. So if you look at Japanese
Oh,
media,
gotcha.
if you
Mm-hmm.
look at Japanese
Mm-hmm.
film productions and all of those things, people are lighter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are people in Japan of a darker hue. You know, it's not a monolithic society. Some people are a bit darker.
I was actually reading an article, um, and the author was talking about, I guess, being taken aback at the fact that in Africa, where blacks are the majority and
Yeah,
whites are in the minority, that so many Africans were bleaching. And I think the author had visited different countries,
yeah.
and she was talking about like so many Africans were bleaching, and she couldn't understand why. Like, I mean, there's more of y'all than them.
All right. So why aren't
So
you the
why?
standard?
And I think she was talking about the influence of the media, and
Yes.
many of them were talking about, and the same thing. This, I guess, it's no different because one person she interviewed was talking about his workplace having more clients when he had a lighter skinned front office clerk.
Look at that.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it was like, that's interesting. Like, you get more clients because you have a light skinned front office clerk. Anyway.
Well, right there, that's something I want to speak to immediately because lighter skin does to some people point to someone who's a little more knowledgeable, someone who's a little more intelligent.
Exactly. And the one of the girls that she interviewed also brought up that point, talking about how lighter skinned people are being viewed as being more educated. But that's a myth. That's a
Right.
myth. I don't think that your intellectual capacity has anything to do with your skin tone. Although I will say that because more opportunities are created for persons with lighter skin tones because of such biases which exist,
Right.
you may find a greater proportion of persons who are lighter skin being more educated, having more degrees, or having higher levels of education than persons who are darker in complexion.
It's true.
You know, they're denied the opportunities. So if it is that I wouldn't say that they are less intelligent than person with lighter skins. If you were to provide them with the same opportunities, what do you think the result is going to be?
Right. Right.
You know, what is the result going to be? The
So
opportunities are not presented fairly, so of course you're going to have like the high low kind of effect.
yeah, an unbalanced
Unbalanced, right?
demographic. So my thing is, from what we've said so far, I think we're looking at a number of possible things that can be done moving forward. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
I think we start with the children. I think you start by ensuring that children do not inherently pick up these biases along the way. And you do so, I think, by showing representation in their media, showing
Mm-hmm.
representation in the media that children consume,
Cartoons.
right? Cartoons and
Mm-hmm.
ensuring
TV
that,
shows, the
yeah,
kids. Yep.
you stamp out anything that points them in the direction of,
Even things, even things, Keddy, like their toys. You know, like the little
yeah,
Barbies and dollies that they
yeah,
get.
yeah.
A lot of these things are like white imitation
Yeah,
of
blonde hair,
I mean
blue-eyed Barbie, right?
exactly. So and you know what the funny thing is? That the children in their innocence, they do gravitate towards it because this is what they are continually bombarded with.
Yeah, it's true.
So they would gravitate towards the white Barbie. They probably may not even want a black dolly that has kinky curly hair.
Well, I would hesitate before I say they might not want one. I think they would if the
Well,
option were
they
available.
may not run to it because remember their psyche is being influenced by all of these TV shows. So if this is not what is on the forefront,
Right.
so they're taking in all of this through their eyes, their ears, and everything. They're taking in all of this that they're
Yeah.
seeing on these TV screens and tablet screens and all of that. So of course, when they are in a real life situation, and which is why because we don't just become adults overnight with these biases.
Yeah.
Again, our upbringing, our socialization, these things have been inculcated in us as children. So I definitely agree with you there in terms of starting with the kids, but we can't start with the kids unless we start with ourselves.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to starting
It
with
has to be
ourselves, I think one of the ways we start with ourselves first is seeing representation uh,
mhm.
of all skin shades in everything, and looking for
Exactly. So we
yeah.
have to applaud like um what's Rihanna's line? Fenty.
Fenty. Oh
Fenty.
yeah, yeah.
Is
Shout out
that
to
Fenty
Fenty.
Beauty or something?
Yeah,
I
Fenty
don't know
Beauty.
what it. Yes. And others like her who are now making such breakthroughs, bringing well or rather dispelling what was the term, one shade fits all.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
have so many different skin tones and shades amongst us as Black people, like
And let's
so beginning to see these developments. I think that that is commendable, and I think that we are making strides,
yeah.
but there's a lot, of course, that can be done.
Yeah, let's not forget too that Rihanna made like tons of money from no and I'm not in any way diminishing how important it is that she did this, but
I
what I
said
want
this
to do is
well.
point out, no, here's what I want to do.
Uh-huh.
I want to point out that when when there is an acknowledgement and uh, real acknowledgement
So
of
yes,
our
this was our response in the Black community.
right,
Of
right.
course, with our money. So
Uh,
yes, of course she will
Absolutely.
make
Yeah.
money.
So what she
she
did
de-
is
she
something,
deserves to. She
yeah,
deserves to. You
yeah.
know, like she deserves to. Finally, Black women, and I mean for those who actually wear makeup and stuff. Finally, you could get a foundation shade that doesn't have you looking like a ghost. You
So,
know, so of course the Black community is going to respond in applause, standing ovation.
yeah. Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah, I see what you did
Yes.
there. So yeah, shout out to Fenty, shout out to Rihanna for doing what they did. And I hope that her success pushes other brands to be more inclusive in their planning and their color palette
Yes.
for women.
And I
Um,
think, Kelly, before you move on, I think that these developments are critical in starting up conversations that need to be had.
right,
Like you know, why is it that for so many years, Black women were restricted to only certain shades of makeup that was nowhere matching their complexion, you know? Why was there no consideration given
right.
for the variation in our skin
Yeah,
tone?
basically, why has nobody already done this?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
you know? So that's what I'm trying to say. Like it it is important because it helps to stir up those conversations that we need to have amongst ourselves, amongst our children, you know, as the future generation, even those before us. Because again, I say, and you said too, we are not in a bubble. We were raised by parents who themselves were raised by parents who were themselves raised by parents, passing on those values to us through the
right,
years.
right.
So,
Yeah. I
so
think
yes, there has to be conversation in terms of how can we address these issues. There has to be conversation where we are open and honest with ourselves, recognizing that, hey, you know, I have unknowingly been a part of this and helped to encourage that sort of mindset where beauty is defined by your skin tone, and it's defined by how light your complexion is. It's defined by how long your hair is or how curly it is. You know, I have helped to um to help push that kind of mindset. Or, you know, I don't know what it may be for you or for your listeners, but whatever areas that we may have helped to contribute to colorism, or the continuation of the issue of colorism in our society in the Caribbean, to recognize that, hey, I'm a part of this, and the change has to start with me, therefore. Because
Yeah.
I have been a contributor, knowingly or unknowingly. I have been a contributor, so therefore the change, of course, has to start with me,
Okay.
or I
And
have to be a part of the change.
yeah, I think what we're doing here today is actually another big part of what needs to be
Hmm.
done to push the needle in the right direction. Um, Making noise, and
Yes,
making some noise and letting people know
yes,
that, hey, this is a real thing. It's time for this to be fixed, right?
yes.
And I'm glad to be a part of the process in that way, right? Um,
I also want to bring up another issue, Keddy, and of course, you know, as a social worker, as a counselor, um, I have to bring it up. You
okay.
know, the
What's up?
issue of low self-esteem, and how low self-esteem contributes to our perspective and our perception of ourselves. And you know how that helps us to come to a point where we're saying, I'm not beautiful,
Yeah,
or I'm not good as I am, so therefore I have to change this. I have to change this complexion that God has given, because that is not good enough. That is not beautiful enough.
yeah,
I think that it stems, you know, we spoke about our history as Black people and slavery, but it also stems with deep rooted issues of low self-esteem. How
yeah,
do we view
it's true.
ourselves? And it's not always solely the responsibility of the individual. Again, it could be society and what society says to you.
Yeah.
Um, your hair too
You're not
short,
good
or it's too
enough, or
negro, it's you're
yeah,
not good
yeah.
enough. Why you don't put some relaxer in that? You know, like all these
Yeah,
things that we say, not knowing the impact it has
right.
on the individual psychologically and emotionally, and how that can push individual. I mean, some people will say to you, well, I'll not go to the extreme and bleach my skin, but we do so many other things
Yeah.
that is a reflection of our rejection of
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 our
who we
natural
are,
selves. Yeah, yeah,
our natural selves. It's different when you say, okay, I will put makeup to enhance this. You know, that's different. When you begin to say that I don't want this at all, then we have to begin to look inwardly.
yeah.
Like this is a serious issue. And again, I say it's not an issue for women only, it's an issue for men as well.
Thank you for
What are
saying
their
that.
insecurities
Yeah.
that they feel,
Society
um
doesn't really. Anyway, I'm not even gonna
for
get
me
into
to be
that.
for me to be complete or to be accomplished as a man, you know, my partner has to be X, Y, and Z. And oftentimes when we look at the list, Kelly, so you have a list, my partner has to be, maybe number one is beautiful. Ask them
Okay.
the definition of beautiful, and we know it is a stereotype, or
Well,
we will most likely
okay.
hear
Uh,
stereotype.
Now, I don't want to sideline the conversation too much, but is you really saying that there's a problem with a man having beauty on his list? Is
No,
that the
but
issue?
but I'm saying, what I'm saying is, should that really be what drives your pursuit of a lifetime partner? You know,
Uh,
so we're talking about, you're looking at somebody that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, you're
yeah.
going to build a life together with.
Right.
So we're thinking qualities, we're thinking somebody who is going to be competent, to build a life together with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't have somebody who's attractive to you, but when that begins to drive the pursuit, then it is questionable,
So
because then it
hold on.
becomes it becomes the most important feature. Should it be the most important feature?
Okay,
I'm asking you as a man,
no,
should it be?
that's why I can meet you, right? Because I think what you're basically saying is it shouldn't be at the top of the list, and I
It's
think
okay to have it on the
yeah,
list,
I think
but
it's okay to have it on the list,
yeah,
but I
it's
agree
okay
that
to
it
have
shouldn't
it
be
on
at
the
the
list.
very top where it's the first thing. Of course, let's be honest, pretty much, the beauty is the first thing that you're gonna see as a guy, right? That's the first thing that that might catch your attention. But on the list of qualities that will lead you down a path of real decision making, I don't think beauty should be.
And lifetime commitment.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more things even beyond beauty that should be considered there. So I think we're
physical beauty.
Right. Beyond physical beauty.
Beyond physical beauty.
Right. And right there, that ties back into our discussion today with colorism, where some people will not even consider someone who is darker as much as they like said person.
Exactly.
Simply because,
my point.
Right.
Can I say exactly again? Exactly. Exactly my point.
Right.
Because you know, how much would you really be missing out on if you just stop at that number one thing, that outward beauty? And again, we have preferences, Kelly. So I say for every man, it may not be the light-skinned woman, you know. I'm not saying that is every man's reality, but for the majority, we know that when we speak of beauty, they may not think of the darker toned woman, you know, who has the short curly hair. They won't think of that because we have defined that as not good enough, not meeting the mark. But who are we to make, like, who are we to make those determinations?
Yeah, it's true.
I mean,
and even on the flip end,
God who created all of us. So for me, even to challenge that is to challenge God.
Yeah. I think even on the flip end as well, we should ensure that in addition to not discriminating against people of darker shades, we should also not discriminate against people of lighter shades as well. Where very often you might assume because somebody is lighter, then they don't want to do something that's a little hard to do, or they're not very aggressive. There's a lot of stereotypes.
Have you ever heard the saying that lighter skinned women and shabbings? Is that a derogatory term, shabbing?
I think it's used in a derogatory way oftentimes. I don't think it's a very formal derogatory term. I think very often you can say a nice thing about a shabbing person and nobody's
because
offended.
I've always known a shabbing to be a person who's really, really, really light. I didn't know the term to have any negative connotations until like some people started saying, well, I don't like to be called shabbing.
And that right there is because it is often used in a derogatory way sometimes. But for me, in my experience as a little boy, my grandmother would say "Tisha be tata," you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, she would say it.
It was like you're on the lighter side. So well, I guess things and times are changing.
Yeah, and even her, bless her heart, she was happy that I was light, you know. And as sad as it is in the grand scheme of things, that was.
I wonder why.
That was her.
Did you ever get a chance to have that discussion with her before her passing?
No, but she generally had this thing for lighter skinned folks, you know.
Yeah. I think, well, I try to be careful what I say. I kind of got the same vibe from my granny as well. Like, for true. Oh my goodness. Which is why I said I'm trying to be careful what I say. I remember, the Lord help me. I hope I don't get stoned for this.
No,
I remember like my my uncle had this one of my uncles had this this girlfriend, and I remember I was a little child, and she was a black woman, like really, really darker than me. And she came home by my granny, and I got this vibe as a child. I got this vibe that my granny didn't like the woman. And a few years after, my uncle and the lady, they were, you know, they no longer had a relationship. And she made this statement about vie from nuestra.
Oh man.
So I I got the vibe. I say vibe because I mean this is what I'm catching from what she said and her attitude, that she didn't really like the fact that he brought home a woman who was so dark in complexion.
Yeah.
And he had other girlfriends, and I didn't see her or hear her say anything similar or
Yeah,
along
she
the
didn't
same
have
lines.
that
I
same
figured
visceral
that,
reaction. Yeah.
yeah, she didn't have that same reaction. So I don't know. I don't know whether it's that generation, like whether I don't know. I don't know. But
Yeah,
I
well,
do remember that as a child.
I think what that shows is that we are potentially moving in the right direction,
Mm-hmm.
because I think as the generations have gone by, we're starting to realize no, everybody's the same. It's okay to have preferences, but in no way is one shade an excuse to discriminate against a given person. Um,
Exactly.
and I think
That,
what I am is optimistic. I'm hopeful for the next generation to see how much further
mm-hmm.
they can carry forward the healing that that I think we're already beginning to experience as a people
I
in the
agree.
region.
I agree. I agree.
uh,
I agree.
so, Krishma, if there's nothing else, uh, we may be at the end of our recording today.
I I just want to share one thing, Katie, before we go. Like, I mean, we never know who's listening,
Yeah.
we never know who's viewing, and we never know what persons are going through. But if you take nothing else from this discussion today, I just want you to know that you ought to love yourself and to come to a place. If you are having challenges accepting you and loving you, then speak to somebody that you trust. I
Yes.
mean, you could find a counselor, you could find a friend,
Right.
somebody who you trust and you could speak with, because I think it is important for us to love ourselves, to love this body that God has created. Yes, we may not like everything about us, we may not like certain physical attributes, but embracing who we are as a whole, I think that it is important for us to get to that place. And too many individuals are suffering with low self-esteem, and we see it, like we see it not just amongst our young people, but even amongst adults, like having not addressed those issues, they are carrying it over into adulthood, and we begin to wonder, why are all of those issues surfacing or coming to the surface?
Right.
Because deep within, the underlying issues have not been dealt with, and that is one of the major ones.
Right.
We don't talk about it in our society, or we seldom talk about it, but it's important. Again, conversation, it's important for us to begin to have those conversations, and
Absolutely.
recognizing that regardless of who we are, regardless of whether our skin tone is light or dark, that we are beautiful.
Exactly.
In our own right, we are beautiful, not because society says we're beautiful, or because whoever says we're beautiful, but knowing that God has made us beautiful,
Right.
uniquely so, might I add. So
Exactly.
I think that is going to be my final contribution. I don't know.
And that was a great contribution as well. So remember, folks, yeah, love yourself, accept yourself, love
Yes,
yourself,
yes.
and if anything, let's continue to work as a people to address the issues that we need to address and make the world a better place for our children and for those who come after us. You'll be seeing us again in 2 weeks. So bye for now and stay easy.
Alrighty. Thank you again.
All right.